So with this year's San Diego Comic-Con, Marvel Studios announced their big lineup for Marvel Phases 5 and 6. Well, technically, a little bit of Phase 6. They didn't really reveal everything, but still, they've announced a bunch of things for Phases 5 and 6. And so the first part of this video is going to be me going through the list of things they've announced, and it's quite a long list. And I'm just going to give you my thoughts, theories, and or anticipations for said projects, just because there are things on here where I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then the second part of this video is just going to be me sort of sitting down and going, should we be excited for this or should we be kind of worried? Because there's been a bunch of things coming out about Marvel Studios recently, namely their treatment of visual effects artists and overall just the quality output of Phase 4 that has me a little bit concerned, because on the one hand, they've announced all these cool, new, interesting projects, but on the other, are these projects going to be any good? And so the first thing we have on the list for Phase 5 movies is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which comes out on February 17th, 2023. And overall, yeah, sure. Ant-Man 3, okay. I think Ant-Man and the Wasp is kind of meh. The first Ant-Man, though, that film I actually hold in quite a high regard. I really enjoyed that film a lot. But, and this is no shade on Peyton Reed at all, but I think a lot of the things that I think are really good about the first Ant-Man film are due to Edgar Wright, because most of the script they used for the first Ant-Man film was co-written by Edgar Wright. Most of the ideas, like the shrinking and growing effects, were all sort of visualized and realized by Edgar Wright. And then you get to Ant-Man and the Wasp and you give Peyton Reed full creative control of the project, and it's just meh. Again, no shade to Peyton Reed. I do think Peyton Reed is a good director. He's a very competent director. His work on The Mandalorian, I mean, he directed the finale of season 2, which, you know, has probably one of the coolest things in it. I mean, I'm being vague as to not spoil it, but I mean, we all know what I'm talking about. And yeah, Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly, that's cool. We're gonna see Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror. An interesting thing, though, is that at Comic-Con they released a teaser for this, and apparently it's a much more darker tone than the rest of the Ant-Man films. Like, the Ant-Man films are sort of going the reverse of the trilogy. There's a trilogy that went very, like, dark. The Thor films, that's what I'm thinking of. It seems like the Ant-Man films are going the reverse of the Thor films, where, like, the Thor films started off kind of, like, you know, dark and sort of serious, and then as the films went on, they got goofier and stupider. But the Ant-Man films, they start off light-hearted and goofy, and then as the films went on, they go darker. It's gonna be like the flip side of Ragnarok, though there is a bit of information they released at Comic-Con, which I'm not really too keen on. I kind of have to see this in motion, is the fact that Scott Lang has kind of done like a 180 turn in terms of his characterization, where like, he's written a book about the events of Endgame, and now he's sort of become an asshole, and is like disenfranchised with his daughter, and it's like, that doesn't sound like Scott Lang. Like, how does that play out? I don't know. Wait and see. That's the thing. We can't judge things too hastily, because when you do, you kind of look like an idiot, because you're just like, oh yeah, you judged this the whole time, and then when it came out, you actually loved it. Me with Spider-Man No Way Home. Next up is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, May 5th, 2023, directed by James Gunn. I don't really have much of a, you know, issue here. I'm kind of looking forward to this. It's a James Gunn Guardians of the Galaxy film. James Gunn's comic book films are always really enjoyable and fun. It's glad to see that he actually will be back to direct this film, because obviously there was the whole thing where he like got kind of cancelled and fired by Marvel, and then he went over to DC to make the Suicide Squad, and then obviously the stuff with James Gunn kind of died down, and then they kind of invited him back, and they were just like, hey James, go make Guardians 3! An interesting thing that I actually kind of can't wait to see in Guardians 3 is Will Poulter as Adam Warlock, because in no way, shape, or form would I ever have imagined, oh yeah, Eustace from the Chronicles of Narnia, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, is going to play Adam Warlock, but you see the shape Will Poulter is in nowadays, and oh my god, he's a completely different person. Like, what the hell? So yeah, I don't have much to say about Guardians 3 other than the fact that I'm excited. I like that James Gunn is saying that this will be the end of the current iteration of the Guardians that we know. People will probably die. I'm guessing Rocket's gonna die, and if Rocket dies, that's gonna be really heartbreaking, because Bradley Cooper's Rocket Raccoon is just like so good. I am hesitant to see how they're going to tackle the Gamora Star-Lord thing, because I think one of the cheapest parts of Endgame is that they brought back Gamora, but she's Gamora from an alternate universe, and it's kind of like, I can get the sort of story conflict that you have with Star-Lord trying to pursue this version of Gamora, who hasn't fallen in love with this version of Peter Quill, but it's like, I don't know, Gamora's sacrifice in Infinity War, Gamora's death in Infinity War was so impactful, and then bringing her back in Endgame was kind of like a cheap move, and it's like, I'm curious to see how James Gunn is going to play with this. Next up, we have The Marvels, which comes out July 28th, 2023, which is directed by Nia DaCosta, and overall, I wouldn't say I'm looking forward to it, but I liked the fact that Monica Rambeau is going to be in this. I like the fact that Iman Vellani's Ms. Marvel Kamala Khan is going to be in this. I am yet to be won over by Brie Larson's Captain Marvel. I liked her characterization a lot in Endgame, but that still hasn't won me over the character because the first film did such a bad job at defining who Carol Danvers was. Like, I know the whole point of that film is that, like, she doesn't have a memory of who she was and all that kind of stuff, but by the time that film ends, I don't know who she is and what she stands for. In Endgame, she's a nice, fun presence on screen. She's there quipping about, hey, Peter Parker, you got something for me? That stuff is really cool and fun, but I need to see her in action as a hero. Like, to be honest, my main selling point of this film is Iman Vellani as Ms. Marvel, because although I didn't entirely love the Ms. Marvel show, I mean, I think the first 3 episodes are fantastic. It's just that by the end, the show sort of fizzles out. But the one constant of that show was Iman Vellani. She was fantastic, and I loved her as a star of the MCU. I love just the way she goes on these press tours, and she's just a massive nerd, and it's really fun stuff to see, and I can't wait to see how that works out in the Marvels. Then again, though, there have been reports, but again, I don't know if these reports are legit or just, oh, some guy on Twitter made it up, but apparently The Marvels is not a great film. It's actually kind of a mess. And the only Nia DaCosta film I've actually seen is the latest Candyman film, and I wasn't a massive fan of that either. Like, it just, I don't know, it was meh. The next project, though, this one I'm kind of excited for, and that is Blade, directed by Bassam Tariq, and comes out on November 3rd, 2023. It stars Mahershala Ali as, obviously, Blade. They've announced that since, like, what, 2018 or something? And just, this is exciting because it's Mahershala Ali as Blade. That's amazing. I've actually not seen the Blade films, but from what I've heard, Blade is a kick-ass character. The thing that has me kind of really excited about this is that apparently they're bringing back Kit Harington as Dane Whitman, and he's sort of like a side character in this film, and that the Black Knight is going to team up with Blade. Like, to me, that just sounds so cool. If you guys have seen my Game of Thrones videos, you know that I'm just a massive fanboy of Kit Harington, and just, he was my favorite part of Eternals. Like, Dane Whitman was the best part of Eternals because he's really the only thing that's memorable about that film to me. And yes, I will watch the Blade trilogy before this film comes out. I know, how can you be a comic book fan and you haven't seen the original Blade? I know. But the reason why I'm excited for this is the fact that it's Oscar winner, 2-time Oscar winner Mahershala Ali as Blade. Like, that just sounds phenomenal to me, and just, he never really picks a lot of terrible projects. I mean, Mahershala Ali is just like a massive fan of comic books and stuff. Like, he's in Invincible, he plays Uncle Aaron in Spider-Verse, he was Cottonmouth in Luke Cage. Like, he's a phenomenal actor, and I just can't wait to see the material he's given, and I hope the material he's given is really raw and punchy, and is something that makes you go, yeah, this is a Mahershala Ali project. The next project, and this is a new one that they announced at Comic-Con, of May 3rd of 2024 will be Captain America New World Order, which will star Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson, Captain America. And I'm excited. I'm actually someone that really enjoys Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like, yeah, I haven't gone back and rewatched it, but at the time it was coming out when I was watching it, I enjoyed it. I liked the show overall. I have my issues with it, namely Carly and the Flag Smashers, but overall, by the time that show ended, I was like, yep, Sam Wilson's Captain America, and I can't wait to see him as Captain America in the MCU. And hopefully this film carries on the tone set by Winter Soldier and Civil War. Those grounded, gritty spy action thrillers that was similar to the tone of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I just want that again, but we have Sam Wilson as Captain America. I hope Bucky's in this. Obviously, Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie's chemistry as Bucky and Sam is just wonderful to watch on screen. It's so much fun. And yeah, that's kind of it. I just hope it's a good Captain America film, because the Captain America films have all been pretty good so far. And then we have the Thunderbolts film, which I don't think has an actual release date, but so far, the Thunderbolts film, the way they've talked about it, it's a bit, I don't know, hit and miss, because if I'm remembering correctly, the Thunderbolts in the comics was a team formed by Norman Osborn, where Norman Osborn is the Iron Patriot. He gets Bullseye to dress up as, is it Daredevil or is it Captain America? Or does he get Nuke to be Captain America? I forgot, but it's like, it's a bunch of Avengers-like characters, and the supervillains are basically pretending to be the Avengers in a way. But the way they've described this film is that it sounds more like the Suicide Squad than it does the Thunderbolts. And also, since the actor William Hurt passed away, they can't really have General Thunderbolt Ross lead the Thunderbolts, and so I'm guessing it's going to be a thing where, like, they'll probably address the fact that he's passed away, or they might just recast, and they'll probably name the team the Thunderbolts, and they'll have, Madam Hydra, I've forgotten her name, but they have Madam Hydra basically assemble the Thunderbolts. And in a way, it seems like they're just going to treat it like it's the Suicide Squad. Like, this will be Marvel's The Suicide Squad. And Sure, but I mean, that's not what the Thunderbolts are. And then for the rest of Phase 5, they announced a bunch of TV shows. What If Season 2. I haven't seen What If. The only things I've heard about What If is that the Doctor Strange episode is amazing and the Captain Carter episode is pretty good. But yeah, I kind of just haven't been interested in What If. Like, I mean, maybe one day I'll sit down and watch it. I mean, I'll probably sit down and watch the Doctor Strange episode because everyone I know goes, that Doctor Strange episode is amazing. Secret Invasion is a project that I'm curious about, and that's mainly because what the hell is Nick Fury actually doing in space? Is he on space? What is the big sort of twist going to be? Because in Secret Invasion, it was like a big event in the comics, and like everyone, like it was earth-shattering in a way. Like you found out certain characters were Skrulls the whole time. Captain America wasn't on planet, or was that Earth Mightiest Heroes? I'm getting that mixed up. But then also you've got Emilia Clarke in this show too, and obviously it's my queen, Daenerys Targaryen. Like, of course, it's Emilia Clarke in the MCU. I do think they could have given her a better role than just, like, a random Asian character. Because, I mean, for all we know, there's a big twist in, like, her Asian character is actually secretly a big Marvel character. But, I mean, it's Emilia Clarke. You want to give her a bigger, juicier role than that. But no, if this show is done well enough, I mean, I'm interested to see what they do. They just have to make it work. Then they announced Echo, and the only reason why I'm kind of, like, excited for Echo is that apparently Charlie Cox's Daredevil is going to be in this show a bunch. In many ways, it's sort of going to be, like, a Daredevil 3.5 in a way. Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin is there. I'm guessing Daredevil is going to mentor Echo. The thing is that, like, the only reason why I'm excited for this is not necessarily for Echo, the character herself, because she was fine in Hawkeye, but it was kind of like, why was she in Hawkeye? But the main selling point is Vincent D'Onofrio and Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock, as Wilson Fisk, because it's the GOAT. It's like one of the best castings of superhero media of all time. They are both perfect, and seeing them on screen again in this show, they've got some of the original Daredevil writers working on this show, which is going to be interesting because the new Daredevil show they've announced, and we'll get onto this in a second, the team they have working on that kind of puzzles me, and you'd think that if they were able to get some of the original writers of the original Daredevil TV show on Netflix, they would put them on the Daredevil show, not the Echo show. But yeah, if the show's a good character piece about Echo, that's cool, but I mean, realistically, we're all gonna be there for Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio as Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk. They also announced Loki Season 2, which, yeah, sure, they're currently filming that right now. Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston are on set and all that, and like, for all of you that don't know, I didn't really love Loki. I thought it was like a knockoff Doctor Who, a knockoff Umbrella Academy. I don't like seeing Loki in this like science fiction realm. Like, to me, Loki works best when he's being the god of mischief in the fantasy setting. He's, you know, like setting snakes and stuff on Thor and all that kind of stuff. To me, I just don't like this weird sort of science fiction route they've taken Loki. And also with Loki Season 1, I didn't really like the fact that it didn't really have a very cohesive ending. It was kind of just like, oh yeah, here's Kang the Conqueror, and then Sylvie, like, kills him, and then, like, creates this big, like, time conundrum thing. And then, like, Loki gets sent back to the TVA, and they're all just like, who are you? And, like, Mobius doesn't remember Loki, and it's like, oh, okay, so what we watched was kind of pointless then. But who knows, maybe Season 2 is absolutely amazing, and it changes me, and I'm like, oh my god, this show is amazing, what was I talking about the whole time? And then we have a project that I find to be kind of baffling, and that's Ironheart. Like, I don't know Ironheart well from the comics. All I know is that nobody on the planet, comic book fans, do not like Ironheart. They think she is an annoying character. Nobody likes Riri Williams, and yet they're making a TV show about Riri Williams, and it's like, no one likes her. The thing that I found kind of funny was that they prioritized promoting Ironheart with Riri Williams, but they didn't, like, continue to promote Armor Wars, like, because that's something that didn't appear on the list of Phases 5 and 6 was Armor Wars, even though they announced that in Phase 4. And it's like, I would much rather watch a show about Rhodey, a character I actually like and care about, than Riri Williams, a character from the comics that apparently nobody likes. I mean, she's supposed to be in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and if Riri Williams is a cool character there, then yeah, I'm probably be more excited for her show, but as of right now, I don't care about this character from the comic books, and so why should I care about her in the MCU? Like, this is gonna be a thing where they have to make me care about this character in Black Panther 2, otherwise then, like, her show was kind of pointless. The only bit of news about this show that I find kind of interesting is that Anthony Ramos is in this, and, like, if you've seen In the Heights, Anthony Ramos is great. And, like, I really like Anthony Ramos, and so I'm curious to see what he's going to do in this show. They also announced Agatha, Coven of Chaos. They changed the name from Agatha, House of Harkness. I think it's just because everyone was just like, oh, House of Harkonnen, and they were just like, oh, it's too similar to House Harkonnen from Dune. Let's change it to Coven of Chaos. And the thing with this show is that I think Catherine Hahn was really great in WandaVision when she was doing all the nosy neighbor stuff, but when she had to start playing Agatha Harkness, I thought the character and her acting wasn't that great. Like, Catherine Hahn is amazing, no doubt about it, but I mean, that flashback scene where Agatha becomes Agatha Harkness, and she's, like, taking the power of her sisters and that kind of stuff, but they're burning her at the stake. I thought the acting in that sequence was awful. I was like, no, this is really bad. And if this show is going to be more like that, then I kind of don't want it. But now we're getting to the real juicy meat and potatoes of the Phase 5 announcement. This was obviously the peak for me, and that was Daredevil Born Again, 18 episodes long, with Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio to star once again. And I won't lie, I heard the news and I was like, oh my god, yes, he's back. Charlie Cox is Daredevil, Vincent D'Onofrio is Wilson Fisk. They're back with a vengeance, 18 episodes. It seems like the MCU is making up for all the lost time because Daredevil was cancelled, I think, late 2017? And it's been, 5 years? They're making up for lost time, 18 episodes for this season. Let's go. But then as the days went by, my rational mind started to take over and they were just like, hold on, 18 episodes? Let's think about this. Who are the showrunners they announced? And we looked up the showrunners and it's a bunch of people that have barely made anything, and that has me worried. Like, why didn't you bring back Eric Olsen? Eric Olsen had a plan for Daredevil Season 4 and yet they didn't bring him back, so what is this show going to be? Most of the MCU Disney Plus shows have not been great, and even if they start off great, they don't end very well, so hold your horses here. And the thing is with this Daredevil reboot is that, like, the Netflix show has 3 masterful seasons of television, and so I will not accept anything less than masterful episodes of television. If they play their cards right and they pace the season very well, give them little story arcs, like every 5 episodes, every 3 to 5 episodes there's a little story arc, and they tell really good and interesting Daredevil stories, that could be very good. But if they don't do that and they try and do the Moon Knight thing, or the WandaVision thing, or the Loki, Falcon, Winter Soldier thing, where they kind of just rush everything, then it's like, what are you doing? Like, don't ruin Daredevil. But then again, like, Charlie Cox is involved, and the thing about Charlie Cox is that, like, he's pretty much, like, the #1 Daredevil fan. He loves this character so much. When he took the role, he didn't know anything about the character, but then he went all in and learned everything he could about Daredevil. He cares about Daredevil. He understands the character to a T. He is, in my opinion, one of, if not the best cast comic book character of all time. The way he plays Matt Murdock is so effortless, but also just so in line with, like, every iteration of Daredevil ever. He plays the Stan Lee Daredevil in the Netflix show. He plays the Frank Miller Daredevil. He plays the Bendis Daredevil. He plays the Mark Waid Daredevil. He understands his character to a T. And so I feel like Charlie would be the one on set being like, guys, this doesn't work. Guys, we need to change this in the script. And I trust him. Like, that's the thing. The way Charlie Cox talks about the more light-hearted version of Daredevil in She-Hulk, and as of this recording, he has not yet appeared in the She-Hulk episode. The way he talks about the character, he very much goes, this character is the same character he's just a bit more light-hearted, because tonally, She-Hulk is a more goofy, comedic tone. And the thing is, when we saw Daredevil in Spider-Man No Way Home, he wasn't in a R-rated material, piece of content. He was in a PG-13 movie, and he played him exactly the same way as the Netflix show. And so I have a feeling that the character will still reflect and be like the one from the Netflix show. He's just gonna be less, darker. And so I have a feeling that when we see Daredevil in the MCU, he's not gonna necessarily be the, darker and grittier version from the Netflix show. He will still be the mature version, I'm hoping. He just won't be as, swearing and depressed and down in the shit. He's gonna be more, like we saw him in No Way Home. I'm a really good lawyer. I also hope in this show he gets a new red suit, because in She-Hulk, from the promotional material we've seen, he has basically the Netflix Daredevil costume, but there's a bit of yellow on it, harkening back to the original Stan Lee design, which I think is kind of cool, and I do like that. But I hope that when it comes to Echo and Daredevil Born Again, he gets a new red version of the costume. And I'd kind of like them to adapt the more modern Daredevil look. Like, I like the Netflix suit costume a lot, specifically in Season 2, but I do think it's time for an upgrade. Like, give him the double Ds on the costume, make it a bit more comic accurate, less armor pieces, or maybe keep the armor pieces, but just make it more streamlined and like more of the modern design of Daredevil, because I think that design looks really great. And whilst I have all these concerns about the return of Charlie Cox as Daredevil, I'm also just incredibly excited to see more Daredevil, because it was my favorite piece of comic book content ever. This is Daredevil Season 1, 2, and 3 were, like, the best things ever to me. They were so well written. Season 1 of Daredevil is an absolute masterpiece. Season 2 is very, very good. Like, I class it like a 9 out of 10, because, like, some of the stuff with the hand isn't amazing. Like, it's good, but it's just a step down from the rest of the stuff for, like, Punisher in that season. And then Season 3 is also incredibly well done. I've only seen it the one time, but from that one viewing of it, it was just as good as season 1, though I do think it's not as good as season 1. Like, to me, season 1 is just so masterfully crafted, and season 3 has a lot of high moments, don't get me wrong, it's just that season 1 is just like the best put together comic book thing ever. And like, that's the thing, I feel like Kevin Feige knows the importance and the fans' love for Daredevil. He knows that this project cannot be anything less than great, and so he's hoping that he, like, knows this is the case and that this show is just phenomenal. But the thing that just has me worried is the fact that he hired a bunch of showrunners who haven't really proven themselves. Like, I would be much more comfortable if, say, an Eric Olson was in charge of the show than, say, these guys who haven't really written anything. Like, who knows, maybe this is their big break and they're absolutely genius writers that write an absolute masterpiece of a show, but as of right now, whilst I am incredibly excited to see more Daredevil, I'm also very, very, very cautious and very, very protective of the character because, like, Charlie Cox's Daredevil is just, like, the best thing. Also, I'm, like, one of those rare weirdos who actually didn't mind Kingpin in Hawkeye. Like, don't get me wrong, he isn't like how he was portrayed in the Netflix show per se, because the writing of the character is a bit weird, because he now owns like a taxi dealership thing, and he like gets involved in the action in the dead of night, even though like Kingpin never really got involved in the action unless he was absolutely forced to. But tonally, I didn't see a problem with him because he fit the tone of the Hawkeye show. To me, it didn't seem like they were diminishing the Kingpin character. It was more just like, hey, Kingpin is appearing in a goofy Hawkeye show, so let's make Kingpin a bit more flamboyant. And also, the way he was taken out made sense. Like, Kate Bishop didn't, like, punch him and, like, knocked him out in one punch. She, like, blew up an arrow in his face and he had to run away. I don't know, in a weird way, I'm sort of like a defender or maybe an apologist, I don't know. I will defend Kingpin's portrayal in Hawkeye because I think just tonally he fit that show. That being said, I do not want his portrayal of Kingpin to be like the Hawkeye Kingpin in the Daredevil show. I want him to be like how he was in Daredevil, because the way he was written in Daredevil was layered, nuanced, there was depth and dimension to his character. He was well fleshed out, and in many ways he was like the parallel to Matt Murdock. It was genius. And so, more Netflix Kingpin and less Hawkeye Kingpin. Oh, and one thing I will add is that I'm not a massive fan of the logo for Daredevil Born Again. Like, it just looks incredibly generic, especially compared to the logo for the Netflix show, because that was just the comic book logo. And whilst I'm assuming that when the show comes out, because whenever they announce these Marvel projects, by the time you see the finished title card for the TV show, the movie, it's much more different than to the font that they announced it with. And so I'm hoping that by the time the show comes out, the font will look more like the Daredevil comic logo, or just a much cooler looking logo than how it actually does now. And now getting on to Phase 6, they've only announced 3 things officially so far, and that is the Fantastic Four, Avengers, the Kang Dynasty, and Avengers Secret Wars. But also, we have to also bear in mind that there are also other projects that they have announced, but not officially announced. Like, they're obviously working on Shang-Chi 2, they're working on Eternals 2, they're working on Tom Holland's Spider-Man 4, the X-Men are coming in some way, shape, or form, and there are going to be more announcements at D23. We'll probably see a much larger slate for Phase 6. The thing that I find interesting about Phase 6 is that they're prioritizing Fantastic Four, Avengers the Kang Dynasty, which will be directed by Shang-Chi director Destin Daniel Cretton, and Avengers Secret Wars, which has no director right now, which is interesting because the Russo brothers have been like, hey, we want to do Secret Wars, but I don't know who they're going to get to actually direct that, because I just find that interesting. And speaking of directors to direct something, when it comes to the Fantastic Four, it looks like that the WandaVision director, Matt Shakman, is the one that's going to be helming that project. But there have also been a bunch of rumors that, like, Krasinski is going to do it, but also that at some point, and this is, like, a rumor that I feel like was kind of bullshit and made up, was that, like, Marvel approached Steven Spielberg to direct it, which, like, if that was true, and they did get him, like, that's incredible to me. If they got Stevie Spee, the GOAT, the greatest director of all time, to direct the Fantastic Four, no complaints, the film would have been a masterpiece. It would have been probably the best comic book film ever made. But yeah, WandaVision director Matt Shakman is fine. He's also directed a bunch of Game of Thrones episodes, so, like, he's not a bad director. It's just that, I don't know, the fact that, like, they're kind of, like, hyping up the Fantastic Four to be something incredible, I don't know. It's a thing where it's, like, there hasn't been a great version of the Fantastic Four on screen. Granted, I actually do like the first one with Chris Evans and Ewan Gruffudd and Jessica Alba and Michael Chiklis. I actually like that first film, but there has not been an amazing Fantastic Four film, and getting someone like Matt Shakman, not a bad choice, but it's like, he's kind of got to put his best foot forward, because there hasn't been like a Sam Raimi Spider-Man 1 film for the Fantastic Four yet. But I think one of the things that interested me the most about Phase 6 was the fact that they're trying to release 2 Avengers films in the same year. In May of 2025, they're going to release Avengers: The Kang Dynasty, and then in the fall of 2025, they're going to release Avengers: Secret Wars. That to me is so bold and ambitious, and I kind of love it. It reminds me a lot of what the Wachowskis did with the Matrix films, the last 2, Revolutions and Reloaded. Swap them around, you know what I mean. Whilst I really appreciate the ambition here, this sort of thing of like, we're gonna release 2 big, massive Marvel films in 1 year, I don't know, are they going to be good? But also, how are they going to shoot this? Because when it came to Endgame, they had to shoot that film back to back with Infinity War, and it took them months and months, and it's like, if they're going to get another director for Avengers: Secret Wars, like, how was, like, shooting and scheduling for that going to work? Like, that just sounds, like, incredibly difficult to me, but if they pull it off and both of those movies are amazing, that's kind of exciting. I think that's really cool. But as we start approaching the end to this video, realistically, the main question I want to pose is that they've announced a lot of pretty cool things, but is this too much? Will the quality of these movies suffer? Is Marvel biting off more than they can chew? I don't know, in a way, because when it comes to Phase 4, there's only been one film that I genuinely think is amazing, and that is Spider-Man: No Way Home. But even then, it's got its problems. The CGI's not great, the quality of the script could have been brushed up a little bit. There's a lot of inconsistencies and writing things in it where it's just like, you could have just tightened that up and it would have been a lot more smoother and a much more streamlined and punchier film. And then you just look at the rest of Phase 4 and it's like, most of it ranges from either good to mediocre to forgettable to pretty bad. Like, if we're going to get more Thor: Love and Thunders, films that feel kind of rushed and half-assed, then no thank you. You can take your quantity of Marvel content and throw it away, because I want stuff that is actually good. But it's also that thing where it's kind of like, Kevin Feige is a brilliant producer. He's an absolute genius producer. He started this whole trend of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This whole trend of everything has to span off and have spin-offs and be a massive franchise and interconnect and interlinked. Like, you cannot deny the absolute genius and brilliance of Kevin Feige, but the thing is that Kevin Feige no longer has as much control as he used to do. And so you can kind of tell with some of the projects that they're kind of falling apart a bit. And so when he's not keeping his attention on certain projects, you can see it sort of fall apart by the end. And we can see that now throughout Phase 4. Phase 4 is the shining example of Disney basically being too ambitious and wanting to pump out more content for Marvel, but Kevin Feige is not being given the amount of time and creative control and creative freedom that he used to have on these projects. And so you can see the quality suffering because it's no longer about telling the stories of these great comic book characters. It's just, quick, make next thing, consume next product. But the thing that I just find weird though is that even though Marvel is pumping out so much content, the audiences are still craving it. They're still just going there in their flocks. You still have the people that have early online reactions just being like, oh, these Marvel movies are amazing, they're brilliant, they're so good. And you have all the people on TikTok just like, oh my god, yeah, Marvel's on top of the world, it's amazing. And so right there, Marvel has built in such a loyal fan base that even if you try to critique its faults and flaws, people will just like jump up in their legions being like, ah, you're just a DC hater, you're a toxic troll, ah. And realistically, just no, you're not being a toxic troll if you find the quality of the MCU films of late to be lesser. You're just being a bit more critical and paying more attention to the artistry and the filmmaking and how it's dropped in quality. I'm not saying that these people can't enjoy the content Marvel is making, no, not at all, like what you like. But there is more to storytelling and to films than just quick cameos and nostalgia. I said this before, but Spider-Man: No Way Home is not great because of the nostalgia. The nostalgia plays a factor, but also the inclusion of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were essential to the story of Spider-Man: No Way Home. They were there to help Tom Holland's Peter Parker make impactful decisions that would impact the rest of his life going forwards. They were there teaching him valuable lessons and they bonded and connected over their loss. Yes, it's cool that they got the original Spider-Man and the second Spider-Man actor to show up in these films, but that's not the reason why their involvement was great. Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker referencing Gwen Stacy. Yes, whilst it's cool he referenced Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy, it came from a character perspective. He was there trying to empathize with Tom Holland's Peter Parker. And that's the thing. When it comes to Avengers: Secret Wars, they're most likely going to be adapting the 2015 Secret Wars, not the original Secret Wars. And so this is the movie where it's going to be cameos galore. But the thing is that they have to play it right. I would love, say, Ian Graffudd's Mr. Fantastic to show up and have a conversation with, I don't know, John Krasinski's Mr. Fantastic, and whoever they get to play the new Mr. Fantastic in the Fantastic Four MCU reboot. But it has to come from a character place. Why are these Reeds sitting down and talking with each other? I would love to see Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool show up. I would love to see him team up with, say, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. But it has to come from a specific character place. Oh, Deadpool 3. Yeah, Deadpool 3 is also, like, in the works somewhere, somehow. They haven't announced it yet. I'm guessing that will be announced at D23. And so, to wrap things up, whilst Marvel Studios has announced a lot of exciting things for Marvel's Phases 5 and 6, they've also announced a bunch of things where it's kind of like, why are you making this? No, do people care about this? Do audiences really want this? And because they've announced so much, my concern is, like, are half of these going to even be good? Like, you hear the stories about visual effects artists being absolutely hammered with work by film studios, specifically Marvel, because they're just being given so much stuff to do in so little time. People are, like, you know, stressing themselves out to death. They're, like, given deadlines that are ridiculous. They're, like, giving half-assed work and they're reflecting poorly on the quality of work that they can produce. And it's like, it's not a healthy working environment if a film studio is just like, we need this shot now, and then you start working on it, and they're just like, actually, no, we changed it, we need the shot to look like this, and so they have to spend like 2 months fixing it when it should have really been a 6-7 month process. The phrase quality, not quantity, exists for a reason, and so I'm very concerned that when it comes to Phase 5 and 6, because they've announced so much, these film projects and TV show projects aren't going to be up to par. Because we've seen Phase 4 so far, and so far, at least in my opinion, there's only been one project I think is absolutely amazing, and that's No Way Home. There have been a couple of other good projects, like I think Shang-Chi is quite good, but other than that, the rest have either been, you know, fine to mediocre to bad. But those are just my thoughts on the Phase 5 and 6 announcements. What are yours? Are you excited or are you worried? Let me know in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, follow me on social media, all that good stuff. Until we meet again, I'll see you guys next time.